Hi guys, welcome to Rufio. It's Joe here. Apologies if I sound a little bit croaky or creaky. I think I'm coming down with something again. It just never seems to end. So apologies, like I say, if I sound anything weird. This is also not my ideal setup, so the video quality may not be up to the standards I would normally have. And as always, apologies if there's any crazy background noises. I'm recording in my house, which is notoriously noisy in and of itself. So I'll do the best I absolutely can for you. This video is not necessarily the happiest video I have to bring you. I've had a couple of regionals that I've been to and took Burning Abyss since the new list. They haven't really gone as planned. The deck has definitely been weakened. Last week I tried to keep very similar to the old builds. I did drop the Hydralanders, a couple of other bits. And it went okay. It wasn't amazing. I was doing quite well in the last 3 rounds. I had a few really tough ones. And then going into this weekend, I'll say this weekend gone because by the time you see this, it will be later on in the week. I went over to the Brotherhood regional, which was absolutely fantastic. You know, it was great. The venue was absolutely packed. Everyone was great there. Everyone I spoke to was really nice. I met some really sort of better known players and that kind of thing. They were all really, really nice guys. So it was nice to see that side of the game because sometimes I think that doesn't really come through. I got to play against much better players than myself, which is I always find a bit of a privilege. I love to pick their brains. My friend was sat watching Joshua Ooster's play. Well, they were playing together. I sat to watch them, which was really nice. I got to see a little bit of how he plays and decisions he makes, so that was quite cool. He was a super nice dude. But anyway, enough waffling. So basically, the regionals haven't gone as I thought they would have done, and I really think that for now, I just need to put the deck down and try something else. Now, I'm not giving up on the deck entirely, but I do feel that for this format, I might need to try something a bit different. Maybe spend a bit of time playing something a little bit different and just sort of get it out of my system and then try again. So with this list, I tried to be a bit more ambitious and not just stick with the bog standard BA lineup. I'd seen a few other lists that had some cool little spicy text and that kind of thing in there. And I really felt I'd try them out and see how I got on with them. And some of them were really good. Some of them weren't so great. Ratios wise, I think this was a lot better. The sad thing with this is that in all the testing I managed to get done, this looked absolutely fantastic. It felt great. Everything went perfect. And then the reality set in when I went to the regional, and it just didn't pull through for me. And sometimes that happens, so I kind of have to just accept it. I had some, I wouldn't say embarrassing defeats, but I lost to some decks that I really shouldn't have been losing to, in part because they just had things that I couldn't out, and that maybe was a lack of foresight on my part. And then just sometimes, you know, some bad plays. By the end of the day, I'd had like very little sleep. It was a long day. I was making some really serious misplays, so I decided to drop like 6 rounds in, 5, 6 rounds in, something like that. I decided to just chill with my friends for a bit while some of our other friends are doing much, much better. So anyway, without going on too much more, I'll get stuck into the deck profile. Like I say, it's very experimental. There's actually very few BA cards in here that we would normally play. The ratio's a little bit different, and there's a few, like I say, spicy text in there that hopefully, you know, you maybe try and you'll like yourself. So without going much further on, I started off with some kaijus. Apologies if there is any glare, guys. I've done my best to get rid of it. So I ran the 5. I'd potentially up this. Most games I was opening 1, but as always, as fate will have it, when you really need them, they're not there. These 2 I picked because I could just Dante and hit over them if I got desperate. But that wasn't really the play I was normally going for with this. And then the 3 dark kaijus, they have some really cool synergy that we'll talk about in a little bit, but we'll get there. Yeah, the dark ones are perfect. These are great. Maybe I would change these. I don't really know. But basically the plan was to just go second in OTK, and I'll talk a bit more about that as I go through the deck. So, yeah, like I say, 5 card use. Maybe I would up this if I could have the space. I felt space was really tight. So, yeah, I just stuck with the 5 in the end. Moving on, we move on to our 1 tour guide. And triple Fiendish Rhino Warrior. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. I don't need to go into too much detail about why we run these in these ratios. You can't have more than 1 of this and 3 of this. If ever you cut that, you'd be crazy. I really do think. Moving on to actual BAs. So like I say, these numbers were really significantly cut. I felt that a lot of the time with the BAs when you're playing through, you get to a point where you cycle through the ones you really need, and then the rest are kind of just there, not really doing anything. I tried to optimize this as much as I could to just extend and extend and extend, play through any interruptions, and then just OTK. And like I say, sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. So we got 1 Libic, 1 Graf, 1 Alec, 1 Farfa, 1 Skarm, 1 Seer. That's it. That's the entire lineup. Now I'll go into detail with these a little bit more. When I was playing additional Skarms, after I resolved the first one and seen the tour guide that I wanted to get, there's nothing else you really want to search most of the time. Maybe a Farfa, and because they're hard ones per turn, and the aim is to just kill your opponent in that turn. A lot of the time they're just kind of dead. They're just in the deck doing nothing. And again, you can't activate multiples of the same card in the one turn because they lose their effects. So Libic was just to link climb. Graph obviously is for your combo with your Seer, and it's at 1. Now these, to be fair, if these were at more than 1, I'd actually probably up those. Alec was... I actually had a bit of a scare in playtesting where someone had summoned one of the Fiend... Vanity's Fiend or something, I can't remember which one it was, the one that stops you special summoning, and I realised I had no out to it, and I needed to be able to switch cards like that off, and so Alec was there for that reason. This did come up a few times, so the tournament was really good, so I was glad that I put that back in. One Farfa, like I say, it doesn't do enough. I really don't feel like it's going to out in problems like there and then. But like long term, it doesn't do enough. Like if it banished just permanently, it'd be fucking amazing. So I think a 1's fine. I'd like to say 1 Scarm because you only really need to resolve it at once, and Seer because it's at 1. Now, like I said, a lot of the time, once you've cycled through these in the initial phase, you don't really need them anymore. You just want your other extenders. So I think that having other BAs or other cards that can do a similar job without the restrictions and just keep going, and some of them more than once per turn. So like I said, we maxed out on extenders. So I went to 3 Wyverbuster, 1 Collar Serpent. So this was a pain in the ass when I drew it on its own. You could still resolve it the once, obviously, to get this, but then that was the end of it. What you really want to see is one of these. You don't really want to open this. You want to search this from one of these, of course. And then you resolve it like that, and then you've seen 2 and 1, and then there's just 1 left in deck, and that's absolutely fine. The other thing is that you don't have enough light targets to warrant having more than one of these, I feel. And like I say, you really don't want to open it. You don't want to mill it either, so that's another thing. So 3 and 1 was perfect. Yeah. Moving on, so I ran 2 Destrudo and 1 Mare. This probably should have been at 3. I really, like, again, it's one of them things where, like, I was playtesting and at 2 it was perfect, like, it came up all the time, and then in reality, you just open this and then you never see these. And then you have to, like, try and find a way to shuffle this back. There was once or twice I actually ended up just discarding it. I just gave up on the idea of putting it back because, like, Sekka just wouldn't come up or something like that. It was really, really strange. I really did have an issue with just, like, opening the worst hands. Like, the deck runs a few bricks, but, like, most of the time they're live, and I would just open them at all the worst times. So, but yeah, obviously you need to run this package. I think most people would agree now. Just being able to go into Borosword in one go is just absolutely insane. People are aware of it though, so you might want to try and bait the ashes and that kind of thing early. I ran triple Gallus, so this is one of these beautiful extenders that can just keep going. It's nuts. It does some burn damage. It's great in time, which is obviously something to consider. I don't feel that this deck goes to time a lot, but other people do really sort of like push the boundaries. And once or twice I actually lost in time, and I really could have done with more burn cards, obviously, to get me over the line. But yeah, 3's perfect, and the fact that you can just keep resolving it in like 1 turn is absolutely amazing. Moving on. So I saw this teched in before. There was a list that got dropped into the BA group on Facebook. This was absolutely awesome. It didn't come up an awful lot. There was once or twice it came up and I had like Colossus on the field, so I was kind of stuck. But when it did come up, every single person read it and you just saw them grin because they knew exactly what you were searching when they realised. And they thought it was fantastic. Like, I had a few people that saw this and really, really enjoyed it. They thought it was a really good tech. So the feedback, not just from me, but everyone else that's seen it, is that they really like this card. This is a really cool tech for those of you looking to continue to play the deck. I did try this. This, again, was from the same list I saw the Goki poll listing. Apologies, I can't remember the name of the guy. I think he was like a CCG player or something like that. I tried these 3 out. This came up like once or twice. This never came up. And Hat Tricker came up like once in the whole tournament. I think it's just like one of each. They just didn't feel like they came up enough. And I think that there are other extenders you could maybe run. I'm sure there's some real justification for keeping these in. I didn't feel that they gave me personally enough advantage. Maybe that's just, you know, not enough playtesting. If I played more, I might have thought differently, but that's just my experience. So, moving on to the danger package, this isn't the ideal ratios. You would actually probably run more of these. I'm still running 2 Snake. I'm running 1 Nessie. I'm running 2 Jackalope. And I'm running 2 Mothman now. So, the reasons behind these are literally, I don't have more of any of these, so I'm just running them as they are. This I still think at 2 is fine. Nessie I'll probably still only run at 2 anyway, but these I would probably up to 3 in an ideal world. But it is what it is. Those were the ratios I ran. They did come up a lot, of course, with the amount you're running and the amount you're digging into the deck. They do come up frequently. Being able to search this is really cool with Goki Poll. Yeah, I would up these numbers, and I think that you're going to see more and more of these in every deck. It became quite quickly apparent at the tournament that danger was a real thing. Like, everyone's running it. It's absolutely insane. And then just to round off, we've got triple Sekka's Light, Undisputed. I really feel this is still the way to run the deck if you're going to continue to. I know a lot of people talking about like PK Fire and stuff. I feel that that's just got more things to go wrong. Just from my experience, from what testing I've done with it, it may change in the future, but it's whatever. In terms of, I had quite a few people wondering why I wasn't running Wheelader and the other like shitty Psychic one. They just don't do enough. Like, the synchro plays they do is just okay. Like, sure, you could like brio them and then you can pop a card. Like, it's okay. It's just okay. I think that there are other cards that do the same sort of job, but with more benefits or have more synergy with the deck just as a whole. I may change my mind on that, but for now, that's sort of how I feel about it. So we'll move on to the extra deck. So I'm running the one Link Rebo. You need it for the Yazzie plays. I've got one Underclock Taker. Pretty self-explanatory. It does what it does. Nightmare package. Running the three of those, I would, like I say, always, I would fit these three in any deck that I possibly can. Any deck that can get two monsters together, these are your toolbox cards. These help you get through a lot of your plays. Absolutely fantastic. Moving on, so I decided to add this. I'd been holding off on it for ages. I've been really stupid to do so. This was really, really cool when it did come up. It didn't come up enough for me for a multitude of reasons, not necessarily through just mistakes of my own, things like a lot of floodgates were getting played, that kind of thing. Yeah, this was awesome when it came up. This also gives you a first turn play option, but we'll go through that in a minute. Moving on, we've got one Trisbania. We've got Boral Sword, and then the new addition that I added to the deck, and big shout out to Corey, who plays in Milton Keynes area. He goes to a lot of regionals as well. This is a really cool tech, was Equimax. It was not something I'd really thought about too much until he played me, and I just realised that actually there's a lot of the time where you sometimes you just don't get quite over the edge to be able to get that Boral Sword, or if you're playing like against strikers, this isn't always your best option because they've got ways to just like interrupt and be difficult. Equimax is a good way of getting over the line. Like, there were so many decks where I could just kaiju a monster, particularly if it was Sky Striker. You just kaiju them, you switch off all of their back row, you make Equimax, after you made Underclock, you reduce their monsters to like 0 or as low to as possible, and it is very, very easy to get enough damage on your Equimax to just kill them in one turn, like OTK. So this just gives you a second option to doing that. You could make the argument that this should be enough, but it is what it is. I really, really enjoyed it, and I would definitely keep it in there going forward. It may change if the format changes. Unfortunately, I didn't play it as much strike as I would have liked, but this was still great. We've got one Yazzie, two Dante, one Beatrice, and one Grape. So, as always, like, the thing with this is that Beatrice is great, but they really find ways to just out her without killing her. So actually, Dante doesn't come up as much as you'd like. Maybe 1 in every 5 games he'll come up, which you could probably argue is not enough. Everything else is pretty much self-explanatory. I think 2 Dante is perfect. I kind of miss Bomber a couple of times. That would have been really nice to have in there. I never missed Borrowload since I've dropped it. Going back to that play that we have with Summon Sorceress and Repredicus. Sorry, losing my train of thought there. This really goes on with what's in the side deck. So one of the things I really sort of appreciate was the fact that we don't have many going first options, and Summon Sorceress actually gives you some playability going first. So we'll talk about that more in a second. So in the side deck, I had one Barbar. That was just for going into time, or if I felt I did just need the extra name. It came up a couple of times. It was okay. I didn't really miss it that much not having it in the main. I got one Thunderbird. This actually isn't great. There's probably better ones you could play. It was just one that I had, and it just kind of tied him in the going first play, even though like the effect sounds like a going second, but I'll explain that in a second. I had 2 Lancia purely because I didn't have a third. Probably you could drop this for a third one. This was great when it came up, as always. It shuts off Thunder Dragons for a turn, which is fantastic. So continuing, so this involves the going first place. So we've got triple Eradicator in here. I've seen this again in lists coming up. I'm pretty sure Tom had this in there, so that's really cool. But one of the things basically that you do is you can use Summon Sorceress to give them a Fiend, and then you can summon a Kaiju to your side, and then the Dark Kaiju, and then you can flip this on them and just nuke their hand depending on what you're playing against. Decks have really, really wisened up to this. So many decks are avoiding back row where possible. Like Thunder Dragons have really adapted recently to start running Sekka's Light, so they don't get hurt by this at all. The representation of Sky Strikers and Alt Guys, from my experience the last couple of weekends, has been really low. Like, especially after last weekend, the change in the numbers of people playing them has dipped dramatically. People are like Alt Guys has been scared off quite a lot of people. because of this and various other reasons. There are a lot more rogue decks about. I experienced so many rogue players. This was another thing that I really struggled with. The deck is really struggling because it's difficult to side, and you don't really have any go in first place. If you play other OTK decks and they make you go first, you're in some like real trouble. So that's just something to consider. And again, it's part of the reason that I'm thinking about putting the deck down just for a little while, just while I work out my bearings. I'm definitely not done with it. It's not going anywhere, but I'm certainly not going to play it for a little while. Continuing with that, I've got one Imperial Order. This is just, again, another shut-off card. If you get your advantage, you can just turn off their back row. Pretty self-explanatory. And then we haven't changed this. We've got the one card Destruction, the triple Twin Twisters, and the triple Red Reboot. I think this is undisputed. You need this in there. Like I say, there are many more decks that are moving away from the back row option, so I didn't get to see these as much as I like. I think for now they're better to have than not have them, and otherwise you find yourself in some real trouble. So anyway, like I said, guys, I don't know if it's just the early changes in the format or how things are going. I really struggled over the last couple of weekends. I saw a couple of the other guys out there who were doing much better than I was with the deck. So maybe it could just be me. Maybe I'm just fucking terrible, which is something I might have to accept. As I say, scrubbing out a local since 2017, it wouldn't be altogether surprising. But if I genuinely reflect, I do feel that there's an awful lot that I couldn't have changed that would have made anything better in the way I played. Maybe there was options I was missing. I took out Pancratops, which was something that I kind of wish maybe I'd had it a couple of times. But for the most part, I'm really not sure that there's much more I could have done. I'm not saying the deck is doomed. I certainly think that there's probably a way to play it that we just haven't figured out, or certainly I haven't figured out that works for me. You may feel differently. Everyone that's touched this deck so far and everyone I've played against has really thought that the build was decent. It's not necessarily pure BA in the way you might necessarily think the purists out there might dislike it, but it is what it is. And like I say, it always worked well in testing, but it didn't work in reality. So, like I say, I just wanted to round it off. I just wanted to have that last deck profile before I put it down for probably the foreseeable future, maybe until Cherubini comes out. Let's be realistic. I'll probably play Salomon Grades, who knows. But yeah, anyway, thank you very much for checking in, guys. Big shout out as always to Mark, who always gives me some great space to play, hooking me up last minute before the regional with an extra card I needed and some nice new sleeves. Go check out all my new shit. Got Facebook, Twitter. I've actually got Instagram. It's also RufioYT on there. But yeah, thank you very much for checking in, guys. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit subscribe. See you in the next one, guys. Thank you. Bye. I'm afraid that's all we have time for in this video. If by chance you haven't had enough of listening to me waffle at you through a video about a children's card game, you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. The links are on the screen, or if you're feeling really lazy, you can click the links in the description. While you're at it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future content too. It'll make me smile, I promise. And who can ask for more than that? Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.